Planning Commission. Let the record show that all commissioners are present with the exception of William Bennett, who is excused. Okay, let's take a look at the agenda. I know we have some additions maybe, or maybe not. I guess you don't need to add anything.
Onto the agenda on new business item 4 was added on something else to possibly add the procedures that we're working on and the ordinances so that we have more clarity on which direction or what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more clarity on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we don't really need to add to that agenda
No.
item to do that then.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if it looks good, somebody can make a motion to approve it as is, I guess, or?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Take a look at the minutes from our last meeting, July 8th. There's some, yeah,
That should be in the
the motion's not in there, right? Okay. So do you want to approve the minutes, but with the change of adding in the motion that we had
still
made?
have the text of that motion?
Well, it should be recorded. Do we
Mhm.
still have the recorded?
I have a recording, yeah. If you guys can speak in your microphones,
Sure.
we can hear on the recording better.
Sure. So we made a motion at the end of the last meeting to send the short-term rental concept to the council, but the motion that we had agreed on is not in the minutes. And so would it be possible to add that to the minutes under the new business item number 3? Thanks, thank you. So now we can approve it with that change, if you're comfortable with that.
So
I can make a motion.
Yeah.
I move to approve the minutes with the noted addition of the motion in new business number 3.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye? Okay. Moving on, does anyone want to make a public comment? No? George, you good?
I'll just do it short.
Okay, you can
This is a good time.
do the
I'll just give you
report.
a short report from the city if you want.
Yes.
Just a couple things. I will reiterate, we did lose our utility clerk who does a lot of our work with preparation of agendas and all that kind of stuff. And not having a robust staff already, it's a lot of extra work when we're trying to, we had water billing. So we're close to having a new person appointed, but it's going to take some time to get them kind of up and running too. So I just ask for a little grace, and if you have anything for staff, try to get it to us as early as possible so we can work it into our busy schedule. But we'll probably have somebody to announce within the next few days. So hopefully we'll get them trained and we'll get back onto a more regular process there. Oregon Trail Days went very well attended. I don't know if anybody went, but it sounded like the parade was great. We had a lot of people in town, so that went very well. There's some things we need to work on still, primarily with the food vendors and power and water and some things over there. But I heard a lot of great things about that, so I'm thankful to everybody involved with that, and it went very well. This weekend, we have the car show, so Park Avenue is going to, I forget between which streets, but kind of down towards the caboose up this way is going to be closed for the car show. They usually do it in the field where the baseball field is, but they've got just dirt spread all over down there. So this year at least, they're going to be doing that actually on Park Street. I think one of the biggest thing is the city we're working on right now is, okay, I've been thinking about this and I knew I was going to draw a blank when I got up here. What did we talk about? Oh, gambling taxes are one thing. We found out our gambling taxes are not in line with, I guess they made some changes at the state level and we didn't get those, so we have to go back and look at our gambling taxes and the rate we can do. So that was a minor, we've been charging people too much for a little bit, but we got it under control. It's not a huge amount of money, but we're getting that straightened out. Then the other thing we talked about at last night's meeting was, Nancy, are you drawing a blank too? The other thing was, the water, that's it. Thank you. I'm glad somebody here has a memory. In the past, we did a water study several years ago before I became mayor. And it's kind of strange. What we did then is a one-time study. They look at what your estimated cost and expenses are, and they base your water rates on that. And there's no way to adjust. You can adjust it, but you have to go back and pay more to get, to relook at that. We found that our water and sewer rates we're in a bad spot. There was some income that was in there that didn't come to fruition, like they talked about the building on Lemon Hill. Remember when there was some discussion about that? Well, they included a bunch of money, assuming we were going to get a bunch of connection fees for that in our water rate study. And there was the septic receiving, which we tried to do and got in trouble for doing, was in there also. So now what we're doing is we're working with a company, it's called Waterworth. And what they do is I call it AI based. They have a program that you can plug in your numbers, you can change them as you go, so tomorrow if something changes, you go into the program, put your new numbers in there and it automatically calculates what they expect for water rates, so we can adjust that instantly. Anytime we have any change in expectations, we can just go in there and change it without any additional cost. So I think that's going to be a great thing, but what we found is we're going to have to raise our water rates. It's a pretty small amount. I think it's like $3 or $4 a month for water. And just so for your information, if you talk to the public, the last time we did a water rate increase was in 2006. And in addition to that, in 2014 and 2015, we cut our water rates because we used the water rate money to fund the sewer money. I think, they didn't want to face reality that we needed to have a pretty good increase in our sewer rates, so they cut our water rates and put that into the sewer rate money. So we're going to have to do a small increase to get us back on the right track with water. Sewer is it's going to be a bigger increase, most likely. We got a pretty big project that we need to do out there that's going to be $1 million+. We're trying to find grants for it. But so far we haven't got a grant. The other option is to try to get a loan. So water sewer rates are going to probably have to go up, and we just went over it briefly at the last meeting, just to inform the council what everything looked like. So just for your information, sewer rates are going to have to go up a bit, I'm thinking. So that's a big issue for the city because we have very high rates already. People struggle to pay those bills. But the sewer and water are proprietary funds. We got to fund them. We got to, but I think we have real projections. We have good numbers, accurate numbers of our expenses and our revenues. So I feel confident going to the public saying these numbers are correct. We're not making any assumptions that aren't going to come true. We're trying to base it on what's really happening now. If something changes, we'll go back and make that adjustment in this program to make sure we stay on the right track going forward. So it's unfortunate, but we haven't done a sewer rate increase for quite a few years either because the prior study said we didn't need to do any increases for 10 years or something, which probably was not realistic in today's world when you're getting, we all see what prices are doing for anything. And so that's a big issue that we're going to have to deal with and come to terms with. And I'll just end by saying I did just mention, I know you're talking about ADUs and short-term rentals. We have been getting several calls about ADUs and what are the requirements. And I don't know if you all realize, the state has requirements for ADUs. They passed some laws that are now in effect for us, even though we haven't adopted the rules for us. We have to follow the state rules. And so we're getting several calls about ADUs and how they can be implemented. So I think we're going to try to get a one-page thing for our planning department so they can look and see what rules we're really under until we get the process done to adopt those rules for our codes. So I just want to make sure we don't give bad information to people when they ask about them. So we're under the state rules right now, which allow 2 ADUs. There's a lot of rules, but basically any person almost can put 2 ADUs on their lots in town
If you
right
have the
now.
space, right?
Yeah. Kind of the questions are, I know one person said they bought a house with the intent to put ADUs on it and wanted to know. There's questions about, can the ADU set out more in the front yard, or does it have to be even with the house? So there's just several things like that I think the state law specifies, but we just need our staff to be able to understand what those are, so when people call in, we can give them accurate information. So Melissa's going to work on getting me a 1-pager or 2-pager thing to do that. So, so it is to me, it's kind of, I want to get as soon as we can, get that updated in our code. So if somebody comes along and wants to look at our code, it accurately reflects what we want to do with the ADU issue. But no emergency, as long as we kind of have those guidelines. Anything else, questions about what's going on in the city, or?
I was wondering regarding the sewer project, who specifically was like reached out to for grants? For the sewer project. Pardon?
Sorry.
You mentioned that there was $1 million sewer project.
So the
are
main
you,
one,
how are you looking for grants?
yeah,
and what's that
Ecology
for?
has
Okay.
some grants that are
Yeah.
out there, and then Commerce are the 2 I think we've reached out to so far.
Public Works Board. Public Works.
Oh, yeah, Public Works Board.
In the comp plan, there's also a list of potential grants for utilities and public works.
Yeah. What we heard from one of them, we didn't get the grant. They said, well, it has to be an emergency, and for an emergency to be declared, it has to fail. I mean, these screens are a vital part of our program. If they fail, it's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars because we'll have to divert all the incoming fluid and basically have it pumped and hauled away. So we don't want these things to fail before we get them replaced. But at least from one, I can't remember if it was Ecology or one of the Commerce grants we applied for, we can get emergency money, but the system has to literally fail before we can get emergency funding, which is crazy.
Moving forward, knowing that these have to be changed every, 5 to 10 years, are we going to start like a maintenance fund?
Yes, and I will say, these things, yeah, we're supposed to last like 10 years, I think. I mean, when I started on the council, like 10 years ago, we were talking about it's going to cost everybody said it's going to be $300,000 to replace them. Well, now we're $1 million+ today, and they've lasted 20, I think they're 20 years old now. So they're basically, we've been trying to patch them together for some time, and they're just kind of beyond. So that is part of our plan that we did. We put in there money for maintenance and capital improvements out there. So that was part of the reason why we had to raise rates a bit, because we just have to have some money set aside for those kind of things. Because the screens are one thing, but there's major pumps and all kinds of things out there that, you know, they're all getting to be 20 years old, which means who knows when they could fail, you know. So we try to include all that in both the water and the sewer funds to make sure we had adequate resources to, maybe we can't cover everything, but kind of the expected ones at least. Anything else? If anybody has any ideas, like I said, we've reached out to everybody we know. We worked with not SCJ, but our engineers to, you know, look into any possibilities for funding. So,
So you feel like no grant funds are available? Is that what you're saying? Like you've looked and there aren't any?
I don't say there's none. The ones we've applied for so far, We didn't meet there's so much priority for these monies, for these public
Yeah.
works things and sewer systems especially. The requests for funds are just far exceed the available resources. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed those things don't fail before we find a source. So
What's the timeline on the sewer rate increase and the water rate increase?
I would guess we wouldn't implement anything until next year, probably
Okay.
in our budget for next year.
Beginning
We'll
of next
consider that. So
Okay.
that's the other thing I was going to bring up. Our budget will be coming up again. It seems like we just finished it, but it's that time of year again to start thinking about budgets. So as you have your deliberations, we need to hear from you. If you have anything specifically that you think we should include in our budget, it would be helpful to get those to us as soon as you can.
Do
We're
you
not
have
going to have a lot of extra money, but we want to hear what priorities are from you and everybody else, the citizens. So please, if you have anything, get them to us ASAP.
ASAP?
Yeah, September is kind of when we really start hitting it hard. September is when we really start hitting the budget pretty hard. I mean, yeah, so next month we'll really be trying to get at least a basic idea on what we have for revenues and expenditures, so. I have a lot of stuff, I forgot. Another thing that's really big with the city right now is the PSE rates. I don't know, I think probably most people have seen that. I did write a response to PSE because the rates that they're asking for, like street lighting, for example, they're asking for a 36% increase in our street lighting costs, which is a pretty big number for us.
Wow.
It's over, I think, around $1,000 a month average. When I kind of analyzed it shortly, like the cost for the wastewater treatment plant, we use so much power out there. I think the increased cost in electricity alone will be more than we'll receive in additional revenue in the next year. So I did write a letter to them saying this is a huge impact on the city. Street lighting seems excessive, 36% increase in 1 year doesn't seem, So I did. Anybody can make comment online if they'd like to about those rates. So if you choose to, please, you can ask me any questions. I have a sheet downstairs that shows all the rates that are proposed. So if you'd like to, I can kind of tell you a little bit about what's going on there. I think that's it.
I know Tacoma has public electric, and I lived in Tacoma before I moved here, and it was like 10%. What I was paying each month. It went from like 30 to 300.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how they got around to having public electricity, but if that's something that a route we can start looking into, that would be interesting.
And then the sheet I got is pretty detailed. They said 70% of that increase is to help improve the transmission lines. I see a lot online about it's because of the requirements for renewable energy, which is part of that. There's no denying that's part of that. They attributed 70% of the increase to fortifying our power lines to resist wildfires and those kind of things like you see in California where, millions and probably billions of dollars are being invested in power. So that's what they attribute a lot of that increase to, is trying to fortify our grid, basically. But anyway, that's all I got, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, we don't have a public hearing, so move on to unfinished business. Melissa will tell us about the city council decision for short-term rentals.
It's usually just sitting there, so I never have to remember. Okay, so on the 28th of last month, I took the short-term rental discussion to the city council to request essentially a discussion with them and how the city would want to move forward. Throughout that discussion, they determined that we would table it for now to have time for me to prepare a budget and answer some questions in regard to, the short-term rentals and what that would look like for building that ordinance essentially, or redlining that ordinance,
So just SCJ's cost to develop the code around it?
Yes,
Something.
yeah, and then part of that is also the budget of what the city has already allocated for SCJ, for planning staff to essentially handle any incoming work from Tenino, and then cross that with what's already been spent for this year. So just essentially provide them a budget of what's left, and then also provide them a budget of about how much the short-term rental ordinance update would approximately cost.
Mhm. Are you including the remainder of your work plan for the rest of the year in that as well? Like what you have projected to work on in addition to the ADUs? Just so that, like in your time management? I'm just curious, because there's like, there's a slice of a pie for the budget for your work. There's like the remaining work that's not ADUs that would also have impact the budget. And if they're concerned about not going over budget for your contracted services, then that would be an impact worth looking at. And I'd also be curious to see like just what that is. It'd be good to know.
I think in the packet for the 28th or the 11th meeting, there was a full financial statement in there.
I saw that, yeah.
Oh, I thought that's what you were asking.
No, I think what I'm asking is like, for your work plan for the city of Tenino, what is the remaining workload that you have that's outside of the ADU work as well? Because if they're curious about like, can you fit this within the existing budget, then you would want to be able to also
Yeah.
share the other things that you do that you need to be able to allocate that time for.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that's a good plan of including the work plan, and essentially being able to say that whether or not we could afford that with the
Yes.
inclusion of updating for development regulations that are required through the state
Correct.
and the critical areas ordinance and what that looks like,
Yeah.
to see actually how much remaining budget there is.
Yeah.
So I can absolutely do that, and then I will also provide it to you guys, because I think that's good information.
That'd be so helpful.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had another question for about what you just said about prepping information. Does that include just gathering up the state requirements that we are current beholden to? Because honestly, just us reviewing that would be maybe a very helpful first step that we could do without you needing to draft up anything new. We just look at the state ADU, what the laws are and what their guidance is currently that we're being under the direction of. Because we can crack into that since it exists already. I don't know, just an idea.
Yeah, the RCW is publicly available.
Yeah.
And I have that number. It's RCW 36.70A.681, accessory dwelling units, limitations on local regulations. I do encourage you to peruse all of 3670A, because that is the GMA, the Growth Management Act. And so that's essentially what determines what the city can regulate or should not or cannot.
Can you give me the last portion of that RCW number, 70A, and then,
681.
thank you. I'd love to discuss that with you all next meeting if you're up for it. We could all
Sure.
read it and then just kind of talk about what we saw, if that's something that we can put onto the next meeting's minutes.
Yeah.
Our agenda, I mean. We could do our homework. Fun.
I like it.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have a million questions. They're just all
Oh,
bubbling
you're
up.
good.
So what I understand is city council just wants to wait to determine whether it's something that you can fit within the scope of the existing budget for your contract, to determine whether it's a feasible thing to approach for this year, is the ADU, developing an ADU code for the city.
Not an ADU, the short-term rental code.
Short-term rental code, okay, great.
Yes, yeah.
Got it. Perfect.
We have to have the ADUs. We don't have any choice about that.
That's true, yeah. So to flesh out with more short-term rentals, okay, I'm
But
catching up.
I guess part of our concept was that encouraging ADUs by making that the short-term rental sort of vehicle, like the
Mhm.
ADU, and then maybe it does tie into the sewer, because then you get more hookups.
Yeah,
And if we treat that in a way that's gonna make the city money, and,
yeah,
you know, it seems
Well,
like a win,
yeah.
potentially.
Well, and the need for hospitality in the area is really high. We could have the Seattle to Portland bike group come back. There's a horse ranch outside of town. There could be a lot of really positive economic benefit to having short-term rentals. Okay. Thank you.
I don't have any further information in regard to number 3.
Okay, on to new business then. Let's discuss the critical areas ordinance.
So the Department of Commerce reached out to essentially ask where we were at with the critical areas ordinance update. I let him know that we had tabled it because we were pending what the Thurston County and the City of Olympia and other local jurisdictions were going to do in regard to fish and wildlife conservation habitat areas. Got that wrong.
Tree
but-
density.
And then,
thing,
for site potential tree height.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's,
And whether or not we wanted to do site potential tree height, or if we wanted to do a standard, like 150-foot buffer. We also did the calculations previously regarding what that buffer would look like if we just averaged the site potential tree height for all of the streams in the city. And we had that information, and
do you
yeah,
remember
that,
how that compared with the 150?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I can absolutely, we can absolutely discuss that next month. I plan on asking you today if we can move forward with bringing back the critical areas ordinance draft. We have some red lines that have already been done. Where we hit that snag was the site potential tree height discussion. And then essentially part of that packet for next month would be really discussing what the other local jurisdictions have done, if they haven't made a determination yet, or really essentially that we need to move forward. So we do have to have an adopted critical areas ordinance by 1 year from when we adopted the comp plan. While Commerce tends to be lenient as long as we're working on it, I would err on the side of caution always, on just trying to make sure that we're moving forward, or at least working on it, and potentially trying to get it adopted by December.
So that's the only change that even is up for discussion, is the stream buffers and how we're going to determine those?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and double check, but from my understanding currently, that was really our only major concern. I also think that it would be beneficial for our newer planning commissioners to be able to review what we have already discussed and redlined, and then essentially reopen it for discussion and trying to move forward with the adoption process. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was making sure that the timeline is updated for that adoption process. Do we want to try to have it adopted by the end of the year, or by the 1 year mark? So typically, most jurisdictions try to have municipal codes that they work on throughout the year done by the end of the year. It's not a rush one way or another. It's just when I build out that essential calendar, that timeline of events of how, when we have the public hearing here, right? When we have the public, or the discussions with city council, when we have the public hearing for city council, when we have those adoption processes, the 60-day review for commerce, all of that. I generally like to backtrack from a date. So that we can really determine how long we have to discuss this before we have to have a public hearing and really get that ball rolling. So
Do we have time to finish it this
Do we-
year,
yeah.
based on all of the?
yeah, if we start
filings?
next month, we should be fine to start it. or to get it adopted, or at least in front of city council by December, generally, as long as the second,
That was our original goal, right? To get it to city council by December,
yes, that was our original goal.
and that's doable?
I'd have to double check. I think that is doable. My only concern is that 60-day commerce review.
Uh-huh. But I mean, if it happens in January, that's better than February, right?
Yep, yeah, yeah, if
Basically,
it's,
so-
yeah. I think that the December to January timeline, I think that's doable. Otherwise, the other option, I believe we formally adopted our comprehensive plan in March, April. I will double check that.
Yeah,
But essentially, we would have until that time to make sure that it's formally adopted and that the Department of Commerce has been notified of a formal adoption.
I mean, I'm open to setting the earlier date and just
Yeah.
knowing we have a little wiggle room. Are there competing priorities on the schedule for planning?
No, not necessarily, because we can adopt the development regulations and the critical areas ordinance at the same time, so
Okay.
it can all be done right then.
Okay.
I think also that brings up a good point in regard to the short-term rental discussion, which I'll bring up to the city council, but essentially, if we did that all at the same time, we wouldn't have to, the city, if they chose to go the route of updating their code to allow for short-term rentals, they wouldn't have to do a separate process if they try to essentially do it in line with this code update.
Yeah.
Is that more cost effective on your time?
It's
since it's-
way more cost effective,
Okay.
especially since we're already doing a development
Yeah.
regulations update for the ADUs, which
Yeah.
is in essentially the same section.
Yeah.
It would only add likely hours.
Could you
Oh.
make sure to add a note to your update to them, specifically saying like this, since the development code, it needs to be updated anyway, and if we're all doing it all at once, it's extreme cost savings. I think sometimes when you just look at dollar amounts, it doesn't make as much sense as when you realize like, oh, if I wait on this, it costs me more money in the long run.
Yeah,
That would be helpful.
Yeah, what I'll do, because I think that you make an excellent point, and is I will develop two budgets essentially. One budget that's if the city decides to do it on its own, and one budget if we just add it into what we're already doing for the requirements.
Great. And then the other question about that is, if it's splitting to budget cycles, I guess this is a question for Dave too. Would you separate it out by budgetary cycle? You could say this percentage of the work would be completed in 2026 and impacts the budget here, and then it would imply a percentage of my work of 2027 allocated, but it would be a fresh budget cycle with new money. That would be worth also differentiating if it creeps into January through March. You could use a fresh budget cycle for your contracted work.
Okay, yep, split the budget cycles for the annual year
Yeah.
or the fiscal year.
Yeah. I think we should shoot for December too, unless
Try and get it
there's a
done.
reason we can't.
I
Okay.
agree. Do you mind sending the red line draft of anything you'd like us to review by the end of this month, so we have 2 weeks to read it? I remember that thing is pretty big. The
Yes.
critical areas ordinance.
So I believe everybody was on the email chain for today, which the Gmail, the G Drive link that I put on there has all of the red lines for the CAO, and I will also put in there the development regulations that we've already redlined.
Thank you.
And then it also has additional resources for just an FYI of, the RCWs and that's specifically for the critical areas ordinance. But I will also update that to have the development regulations so that you guys have access to that.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so just to confirm, I will create a timeline, going back from the last possible day that we could have city council review. Do you know if city council takes any time off during the holidays?
Yeah,
Like-
they take the second,
I think
there's no second meeting in
Meeting
December.
in December,
Okay.
we usually don't have a meeting.
Okay, cool.
And
So the,
November also.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, there's one
It
around
depends
there.
on when Thanksgiving lands.
okay. So I'll base the timeline off of a second city council meeting for formal adoption by the first city council meeting in December. And then if that's not plausible, just going back, then I will stretch that out to January. And then if any of our work goes into January, I will split that fiscal budget so that we can see how that would pan out.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do not have any other information. If you have any questions, I'm happy to.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions about the new business or anything maybe that you'd like to see on the next agenda? Sounds like we're getting full for the year maybe, but yeah.
The only thing I'd like to see at the next agenda is, we had at the beginning of the year a discussion about things that we'd like to work on, and maybe not at the next one, but sometime before the year is ending, I'd like us to look at the notes from that discussion. And because we have, new commissioners, and I think it'd be a good way to kind of take a look at, okay, what did we actually start? What are things that we want to add to the work plan, especially when you're considering your budget, and Melissa, you're considering your next year's work plan. It'd be good for us to kind of refresh ourselves on what we thought was a priority and what we'd like to see. And just kind of
Makes
review.
sense,
That
yes.
would be really nice.
Year in review.
Yeah, and it might be good to do it maybe at the next meeting, since budget cycle will begin at that time. And then if there is any budget implications, we'd actually know, we'd be doing it based on an aligned discussion on planning.
I think that was one of my questions to you about the work plan.
Yeah.
Slow down to us for the year.
When we could draft that up as our annual work plan, and we would know what you would need to work on next year and what the key points are, but then we'd also be able to remind ourselves about the things that mattered to us that we'd like to look into and review and initiate, and then we can have a work plan for next year. I'd like that. That would be
Okay.
great.
I can absolutely do that.
Yay.
Plan.
Thank you.
Nice. Okay. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? George, did you want to say anything?
Hi, Planning Commission. I know most of you, but Brian, I haven't met you. So I'm George Sharp. I'm with the Thurston Economic Development Council, and I run a program called South Thurston Economic Development Initiative, STEADY for short. Meets on the third Friday of most months. We're not going to meet in August, but we'll meet next month. STEADY and the EDC wants to support all of our rural communities, but specifically with Tenino, the EDC has a contract with the Tenino Chamber for me to be a support staff member to them as well. And then we also work with the city on projects, and as you know, Aslan works on the ag park. And so I've been watching you at night about 2 a.m. I watched that council and the county commissioners and the Yelm Chamber. And so I watched last month and really interested in the short-term rental and how that could move forward, because there is a demand. I mean, the Tenino Ranch brings 500 people. A lot of them stay in a RV out there, but there are other people. And Offutt Lake Resort's full a lot, so they could be feeding more people into it. And then the chamber wants to attract more people just from marketing Tenino as well, and our experiences that we have here. And then I know Cheryl has also talked to some of you about what we could do. Last year, we did have you come and speak twice to the chamber, once in March about the comprehensive plan, and then I think the other one was in July. I'd been working with Adam about some ideas, and then Valerie and I met last year to talk about how STEADY could help support. So we are very interested to watch and see how we can help support what the Planning Commission wants to do in the future. And that's want to stop by and say hi and talk about that. And I didn't have to watch you at 2 a.m. tonight, so thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, if you're doing public comment
Yes,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to say one thing when you're talking about the ADU and the short-term rental things. The AWC, which we're part of, has a great resource online where you can go back and see what other communities are doing around this. That's where I try to, first place I try to look. If we're talking about one of these, I go there and search ADUs and try to see what other people are doing. So it's a great resource. I can send you all a link to that so you
Yeah,
don't have
that'd
to
be
hunt
great.
through the whole website. It'd be easier for you to find it, but they cover everything. You can, yeah, almost every city in the state has their, they'll highlight if they have an ADU, it'll pull it up. So a great resource. And I also do have I don't know, I outstepped, but I did a kind of initial ordinance around ADUs, just based on the state guidelines, not going outside of those, but, so I will send that to you also, so you can just kind of see what I drafted up about for ordinance around that, just so, give you a place to start and just see what you think.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sounds good, thank you. All right. Any other comments or questions? Think we're good? I'm about to say,